push for social justice and equality marches on, there's one area where there continues to be a major gap between communities of color and their white counterparts. Our Mark Thompson is live right now from home to explain the disparity when it comes to home ownership. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning to you, Kaylee. And it comes down to redlining, which is a form of lending discrimination that's been outlawed for decades, but the systemic practice of the past is still having a lasting impact today. The housing market is strong, surviving remarkably well and better than expected during the COVID-19 pandemic.
Right, the market is pretty hot.
But hotter historically for some more than others. Patricia Garcia Duarte is president and CEO of Trellis, a nonprofit aimed at guiding low-income and minority families into sustainable home ownership.
Buying a home is a very stressful process, and we want to make sure that people do it the right way.
But Duarte points out that there is still a significant disparity in home ownership between communities of color and their white counterparts. In fact, in a recent study conducted by Redfin, it shows the disparity in Phoenix for the first quarter of 2020 of just 33% black home ownership compared to 70% home ownership for their white counterparts, one of the largest margins in major cities. So why such a large gap? Duarte says that some systemic practices of the past are still impacting minority communities today.
There was actually intentional policies set by government that didn't allow African Americans to get a mortgage.
Policies like redlining.
Redlining was really created in the years right after the Second World War, when GIs came home and they had access to the GI Bill.
ASU professor Rashad Shabazz says that the government created Fannie Mae and Freddie Mac to provide low-interest loans to veterans, allowing easy access to home ownership. But black veterans, he says, were either denied these loans, forcing them to rent, or cities would section off, often with a red line, the most desirable suburban areas for whites, leaving black and Latino families in less desirable areas with lower property values.
What the federal government did is that it subsidized white communities and white suburbs all over the nation. About 95% of all loans went to those white communities.
Kevin and Jamal live only a few streets away from each other. So how come they're growing up in such different worlds with such different opportunities for success? The answer has to do with America's history of systemic racism.
Alex Sakea is a producer for ACT TV. He's gotten millions of views on this animation video that he created, breaking down redlining and the lasting impacts of systemic racism.
Just look at a property value map of how much houses cost in a city. You will see what look like lines. You will see neighborhoods. You will see clusters, right? If you overlay an old redlined map on top of that, you'll see they correlate a lot.
So what is the lasting impact of redlining? Sakea says because whites were given loans to purchase homes in the suburbs, the wealth from their homes, a great investment, could be passed down to their children, an engine to create generational wealth. Wealth communities of color were denied.
Sometimes wealth doesn't mean you just get money. A lot of times it just means you get access that you wouldn't otherwise have.
Access to a college education, internships, connections to jobs. Access to communities of color was systemically locked out. Now, coming up tomorrow morning, I'm going to look in a little bit further about how these systemic practices of the past have now led to just a staggering gap in wealth between minority communities and their white counterparts. These, again, practices of the past still having lingering impacts today. Guys, back to you.